He captured the hearts of millions with his fearless spirit and love for animals. The world knew him as the Crocodile Hunter, but to his family and fans, he was a cherished figure that inspired a generation. His untimely passing was a shock to all, but his legacy continues to live on. Despite incredible beauty, many potential dangers exist in nature. And yet, there are those who respect these creatures and their habitat. And it's this admiration that drives us to learn more. But how did it all end for Steve Irwin? He was more than just a TV personality, fearlessly feeding crocodiles in front of the cameras. He was a wildlife expert, an environmentalist, an advocate for nature conservation, and a zookeeper. Growing up surrounded by animals, Steve inherited his passion from his father Bob, a wildlife expert with a special interest in reptiles and amphibians, and his mother Lynn, a wildlife rehabilitator. Growing up surrounded by crocodiles, the boy had an unconventional childhood. At the age of 44, Steve Irwin already had a decade of experience in television and the wildly popular series The Crocodile Hunter, which earned him both fame and his nickname. He seemed to never take a break, but that was by choice. He was in love with his work, both on and off camera. He was devoted to his wife, Terry, and adored his two young children, 8-year-old Bindi and 2-year-old Robert. On September 4th, Steve Irwin and his team were filming at Bat Reef, a part of Australia's Great Barrier Reef located off Port Douglas. They were in the midst of producing the documentary, Ocean's Deadliest. Although Steve was feeling optimistic and driven, not everyone on the crew shared his enthusiasm. His close friend and producer of The Crocodile Hunter, John Stanton, had a nagging feeling that something was off. In fact, 3 weeks prior to filming, John had even contacted Discovery Channel, pleading with them to call off the project. However, Discovery had already invested a significant amount of money into production. John reluctantly agreed to proceed, but not before undergoing medical tests and preparing his will just in case his fears were realized. Steve's speech to the crew a couple of days before filming started left John Stanton feeling uneasy. As they stood together on the deck of Steve's boat, reflecting on the day ahead, John couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. Steve, on the other hand, seemed motivated as ever, ready to take on another adventure. Little did they know, it would be the last one they would ever go on together. As Steve and John sat on the deck of the Proc 1, Steve spoke about how content he was with life, ever the optimistic and adventurous spirit. However, the day did not go as planned when the crew realized the water was too cloudy for filming Ocean's Deadliest. While some may have taken this as a sign to take a break, Steve was not one to sit idly by. Instead, he saw this as an opportunity to capture footage for his daughter Bindi's wildlife show. With Bindi set to be the presenter of the upcoming show, Steve was determined to make it a success. He instructed his cameraman Justin Lyons to prepare for a quick dive, as they were no strangers to snorkeling. Initially planning to shoot scenes with a tiger shark, they were unable to find one and opted to film a stingray instead. They took an inflatable boat away from the main vessel and dived into the water. At the time, there was nothing to indicate what was about to happen. The water was shallow, and the divers were experienced. Stingrays are not generally considered dangerous creatures. While they do have stingers, they are typically not aggressive. When they sense potential danger, stingrays usually swim away or hide their flat, cartilaginous bodies beneath the sand. They rarely attack humans, and when they do, it is usually because they have been provoked, such as when they are accidentally stepped on. Underwater, Steve and his cameraman Justin Lyons spotted a beautiful short-tailed stingray. Despite being a shallow and familiar diving spot, the crew didn't expect any danger from the stingray. Stingrays are not typically considered a threat to humans, as they usually swim away or bury themselves in the sand when they sense danger. However, as Steve and his cameraman Justin Lyons were filming the beautiful short-tailed stingray, something inexplicable happened. The usually calm creature suddenly became agitated and thrust its razor-sharp tail, striking Steve in the chest with its barb. Steve, who had dealt with dangerous animals such as crocodiles on a regular basis, wasn't afraid, but the attack proved to be fatal. Despite the shock and panic that ensued, Lyons didn't put the camera down, as Steve had always emphasized the importance of filming no matter what happened. So the camera continued rolling as the stingray continued to thrash wildly. When it eventually swam away, Steve was left standing in a large pool of blood. Initially, it was reported that Steve had managed to pull the barb out of his chest, but his cameraman Justin Lyons, who was present and recording the incident, later clarified that this was not true. In reality, the barb had pierced Steve's chest like a hot knife through butter, and he immediately knew he was in trouble. He stood up from the chest-deep water and started screaming in agony. The initial report was that the stingray barb had punctured Steve's lung, but the reality was much more severe. Justin Lyons saw a 2-inch injury over Steve Irwin's heart with blood and fluid pouring out of it. He and the rest of the team quickly pulled Irwin into the inflatable boat and rushed back to the main boat. Justin was in a panic, desperately trying to help his friend, directing other crew members to cover the wound and telling Steve that he had to survive for his children. However, Steve calmly looked at his friend and told him, "I'm dying," before losing consciousness. The cameraman immediately began performing CPR, and the entire attack, along with the CPR and medical efforts, was captured on film. Paramedics arrived shortly after, but it only took them about 10 seconds to confirm that Steve had passed away. In a matter of seconds, Steve Irwin, who was loved by many, passed away while doing what he loved the most, interacting with an animal. Even if the crew had managed to get him to a hospital, his heart damage was too extensive to survive. The footage of his accident was never made public and is unlikely to ever be. Steve's wife Terry and their children Bindi and Rob were on a trip in Tasmania when they received the news. The zoo manager called Terry, and she had to fight back tears to inform her children. When they returned to Australia Zoo, they were surprised to find the media waiting for them. Amidst the flowers were tributes from those who had mourned the loss of Steve Irwin. Terry chose not to remarry, as she believed Steve was her soulmate and no one could ever replace him. Instead, Terry and their children Bindi and Robert have taken on Steve's life's work and now manage Australia Zoo. Both Bindi and Robert are dedicated conservationists and zookeepers, striving to make their father proud every day. Steve Irwin will always be remembered by the world, not only as a comical and entertaining showman, but also as a passionate conservationist and wildlife enthusiast who employed unique methods to spread awareness and educate the public about the significance of nature.